Rain fell steadily over Portland that evening, soft but persistent, wrapping the city in gray and the scent of wet streets. Inside the reading room, Claire's small bookshop, time moved slower. The air smelled of paper, ink, and roasted coffee from the cafe next door. Claire stood behind the counter, tapping her pen against a notebook, her mind lost somewhere between exhaustion and peace. The shop was quiet, as usual, just the hum of rain and the ticking of the old wall clock. Her life had become a quiet rhythm. Wake up, open the shop, talk to a few customers, close up, go home. It was safe, predictable, and maybe a little lonely. At 37, Claire had accepted that solitude was easier than disappointment. Her marriage had ended 3 years ago, her parents had moved away, and her closest friends were busy raising families. Books were her company now, the kind that never left. The door chimed suddenly, the sound pulling her back to the present. A man stepped in, shaking the rain from his dark coat. His hair was damp, his shoes slightly muddy, and yet he looked calm, like the rain hadn't touched him at all. Claire's first thought was that he didn't seem like a regular customer. He didn't glance at his phone or rush to the fiction section. He looked around slowly, taking in every corner of the store as though he was searching for something hidden in it. "Cold evening," Claire said, offering a polite smile. The man smiled back. "Books make it better," he said, his voice low and steady. Something about his tone made her pause. She watched as he walked between the aisles, running a finger along the spines of old novels. He moved with an ease that was unusual, almost deliberate, like he belonged there. After a moment, he stopped in front of a small shelf marked Classics. "You have first editions here," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I collect them," Claire replied. "It's my weakness." He nodded slightly. "Not a bad one to have." His eyes met hers for a moment, warm, intelligent, but unreadable. Claire felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. She quickly looked away, pretending to sort through a pile of receipts. It had been a long time since she had felt that kind of awareness toward anyone, especially a stranger. He brought a copy of The Great Gatsby to the counter. "Do you believe people can change?" he asked suddenly, tapping the cover lightly. Claire blinked, surprised. "Change?" He smiled faintly. Gatsby tried. "I always wondered if he really wanted to change or just wanted to rewrite the past." Claire thought for a moment. "Maybe we all want that sometimes," she said softly. He studied her, as if her answer mattered more than it should. Then he nodded. "You're probably right." When he handed her his credit card, she noticed the name printed on it. Ethan Gray. "Claire," she said, offering her hand after ringing up the sale. He shook it lightly. "Nice to meet you, Claire." His hand was warm, his grip steady. After he left, Claire found herself staring at the door longer than she meant to. The bell above it still swayed faintly. She didn't usually think much about customers, but something about Ethan lingered. He had this quiet confidence, like someone carrying more stories than he told. Over the next few weeks, Ethan started coming in often. Sometimes he bought a book. Sometimes he just talked. He liked to ask questions about literature, art, life. They would talk for hours without realizing time had passed. Claire found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit. He had a way of making her feel seen, as though her silence didn't make her invisible. One rainy evening, he stayed past closing time. The city outside was wrapped in mist, streetlights glowing like small suns through the fog. Claire was locking up when Ethan picked up a box of unshelved books. "Let me help," he said. "You don't have to," she replied. "I want to," he said, setting them gently on the counter. He leaned against it, watching her carefully. "You know, you're not like most people," Claire frowned, half smiling. "That sounds like something people say before they disappear." He chuckled. "Maybe, but I mean it. You seem steady, but you look like someone waiting for something. Or someone." The comment caught her off guard. Her heart skipped. She forced a small laugh. "Maybe I'm just waiting for the right story." "Then maybe it's already here," he said quietly. Their eyes met, and the moment stretched, soft, unspoken. but full of something she couldn't name. She broke it first, glancing at the clock. "I should close up." He nodded but didn't move right away. "I'm part of something," he said suddenly, his tone shifting. "Something I think you'd like." "What do you mean?" "A club," he said, pulling a small black card from his pocket. "Private. We meet once a month. You might find it interesting." Claire took the card hesitantly. It was simple, no logo, just an address and the words, "The Circle." "A secret club?" she asked, amused but curious. Ethan smiled. "Something like that. It's not what you think. We talk about ideas, art, dreams, things most people forget about." "Sounds mysterious," she said. He gave a quiet laugh. "It's meant to be. Come this Saturday, 8 p.m. If you don't like it, you never have to come again." Before she could respond, he slipped on his coat and headed to the door. "See you, Claire," he said, his voice gentle like a promise. The door closed softly behind him, leaving her alone in the dim shop with the sound of rain outside. She looked down at the card again, feeling her heartbeat quicken. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with the black card beside her cup of tea. It felt strange to be nervous about something so simple, a club, a stranger's invitation, and yet her mind kept circling back to him. His calmness, his eyes, the way he spoke like he knew something she didn't. Her life had been built on routines, on safety. But now she felt something stirring, a restlessness she hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe loneliness, or maybe it was the way Ethan had looked at her, like she still had chapters left to live. As thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, Claire whispered to herself, "What's the worst that could happen?" Outside, the rain kept falling, and in that moment, she didn't know that saying yes to Ethan's invitation would change everything she thought she knew about herself. Saturday arrived sooner than Claire expected. The black card sat on her desk all week, quiet but impossible to ignore. Every time she tried to convince herself to throw it away, her mind returned to Ethan, his calm confidence, his mysterious smile, and the feeling that he knew something she didn't. Curiosity had always been her weakness, and now it whispered louder than her doubts. By 7:30, she found herself standing in front of the mirror, unsure why she was nervous. She wasn't dressing for a date, she told herself, just an evening out. Yet, she still took a moment longer to fix her hair and choose a soft blue coat instead of her usual gray. Something inside her wanted to feel seen again. The address led her to an older part of Portland, where narrow streets glowed under amber streetlights. The building was tucked between two old warehouses, brick walls, ivy creeping up the sides, a single lantern over a dark wooden door. It looked nothing like a club, more like a forgotten library. There was no sign, just the same words carved subtly into the door. "The Circle." She hesitated, her breath visible in the cold. For a moment she considered leaving. Then she heard a voice behind her. "I was hoping you'd come. Ethan." He stepped out of the shadows, smiling in that calm, effortless way of his. He wasn't wearing a coat this time, just a black sweater and jeans. He looked relaxed, but his eyes carried the same quiet intensity she remembered. "Didn't think you'd show up," he added. "I almost didn't," she said honestly. "But you did. That's what matters." He opened the door for her and she stepped inside. The interior surprised her. Warm lighting, shelves of books, paintings, and an old piano in the corner. About 15 people were there, talking quietly in small groups. They looked ordinary, artists, writers, teachers, people who could easily blend into any crowd. Yet there was something different in the air. The room felt alive, like everyone there shared a secret they didn't need to speak aloud. A woman with silver hair greeted her kindly. "First time?" "Yes," Claire said. "Welcome to the Circle," the woman said with a soft smile. "No judgment, no rules. Just stories and truth." Claire nodded, though she didn't quite understand. Ethan guided her toward a corner, where a few chairs were arranged in a circle. "We meet to talk," he said quietly. "Not about news or work or money, but about things people forget matter." "What things?" she asked. "Regret, hope, what makes people feel alive?" Soon everyone sat down. The lights dimmed slightly, and the woman with silver hair, apparently the host, began speaking. "Tonight's theme," she said, "is second chances." Claire felt a chill run through her. One by one, people shared. A man spoke about reconnecting with his estranged son after 10 years. A woman talked about leaving a high-paying job to paint again. The stories were simple but raw, filled with honesty she rarely saw in everyday life. No one interrupted or judged. It felt like a space where truth was safe. When it was Ethan's turn, the room grew still. He leaned forward slightly, eyes down. "I built my life around success," he began. "Work, money, travel, and the usual things people chase. But the more I gained, the more I lost myself. 3 years ago, I walked away from all of it. I wanted to find something real again." His voice was quiet, steady, but there was pain beneath it, the kind that doesn't fade easily. "I started the circle with a few friends," he continued. "We wanted to create a place where people could stop pretending for a while. No small talk, just truth." Claire felt her chest tighten. His words hit somewhere deep, where her own loneliness had been quietly sitting for years. When it came to her turn, she hesitated. All eyes turned to her, but there was no pressure, only patience, I guess. She began slowly. "My second chance started when I opened my bookshop. I'd just gone through a divorce. I didn't know who I was anymore, but books helped me remember the parts of myself I thought I lost. I built a quiet life, safe, small, maybe too small. I didn't think I wanted anything more, until lately." Her voice wavered slightly at the end, and she caught Ethan's eyes across the circle. He gave her a small, understanding smile. After the stories ended, the group drifted into light conversation and music. Someone played the piano softly. Claire walked over to a painting on the wall, a swirl of colors that looked like both chaos and calm. "Do you like it?" Ethan asked, coming to stand beside her. "It's beautiful," she said. "It feels like everything at once." He nodded. "That's what we're all made of. A little chaos, a little calm." She looked up at him. "Is that what this place is about?" He thought for a moment. "It's about remembering we're still alive, even when life feels quiet." Something in his words stayed with her. For the first time in years, she felt connected. To something larger. To herself. To him. As the evening ended, Ethan walked her outside. The rain had stopped and the street was quiet. The city lights shimmered off puddles, painting reflections that looked like scattered dreams. "Thank you for inviting me," Claire said. "I'm glad you came," Ethan replied softly. Then he added, "You belong here more than you think." Her heart skipped at his words. "What does that mean?" He smiled faintly. "You'll understand soon." Before she could ask, a man called his name from inside. Ethan turned briefly. "I have to go back in." "But Claire..." He paused, his gaze lingering on her face. "Next time, come a little early. There's something I want to show you." Then he was gone, disappearing back through the door. Claire stood there for a moment, unsure why her chest felt both heavy and light at once. She looked down at the card still in her hand, the circle. It no longer felt like a secret club. It felt like a key to something she hadn't known she needed. That night, when she lay in bed, she replayed everything. The stories, the warmth in Ethan's eyes, the strange comfort she'd felt among strangers. For years, she'd lived like a ghost in her own life, but now she felt awake again. And yet one thought wouldn't leave her. What did Ethan want to show her next time? It wasn't fear she felt, it was anticipation. For the first time in a long time, she was curious about tomorrow. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the circle held more than it appeared. And somehow, Ethan was at the center of it. The next Saturday came with a quiet thrill in Claire's heart. All week, her mind had been circling back to Ethan's words. "There's something I want to show you." They echoed in her thoughts every time she looked up from a book, every time the shop bell rang, and even when she tried to sleep. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew she had to go back. By the time she reached the building, the city was wrapped in the kind of gentle drizzle that made the streets shine. She clutched her umbrella, heart quickening as she saw the faint golden glow spilling from the windows of the circle. The wooden door stood slightly open, and soft music floated out. A slow piano tune that sounded almost familiar. Ethan was waiting just inside. "You came early," he said, a quiet smile lighting his face. "You told me to," she said, trying to sound casual, though her nerves made her voice softer. He gestured toward a staircase she hadn't noticed before. "Come with me. There's something upstairs I want you to see before everyone arrives." The stairs creaked under their feet as they climbed. The upper floor was dimly lit, filled with old paintings, books, and a long table scattered with sketches. It felt like a hidden part of the world, untouched and full of stories. Claire walked slowly, her eyes tracing a half-finished painting that caught her attention. It showed a bridge surrounded by mist, with a single figure standing at the edge. Something about it tugged at her. "You painted this?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "A long time ago, before I forgot how to listen to myself." She turned to him, curious. "What do you mean?" He leaned against the window frame, looking out at the rain. "When life moves too fast, we forget to hear what's inside us. This place, the Circle, was never meant to be a club. It's a space for people who are trying to remember who they really are." Claire studied him. "You talk like someone who's been lost." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I was. But you know what's strange?" He looked at her now, his voice low but warm. "Sometimes it takes meeting someone else who's lost in a different way to find your way back." She felt a quiet pull in her chest. His words weren't meant to charm. They felt honest. And in that honesty, she sensed something rare. Ethan walked over to the table and picked up a small leather notebook. He opened it and handed it to her. Inside were pages filled with sketches of faces, laughing, crying, thoughtful. And among them, near the end, a drawing of her. Her breath caught. "This is me," she whispered. "I drew it the day you came," he admitted softly. "You look like someone trying to find something without realizing it." She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to ask why, but another part simply understood. She looked at the sketch again, gentle lines, thoughtful eyes, and for the first time in years, she saw herself not as she had been, but as someone who could still grow. Ethan broke the silence. "There's one more thing." He crossed to a wooden chest and opened it. Inside were dozens of letters tied with ribbons. He pulled one out and handed it to her. "These are from people who came here. Stories they didn't tell aloud." Claire opened the envelope. The handwriting was careful, almost trembling. "I thought I was invisible," it read. "But someone here looked at me like I mattered again." Her throat tightened as she looked up at Ethan. "This place, it really helps people." "That's what we try to do," he said quietly. "We remind people that being seen, being heard, is still possible." Before she could answer, voices echoed from downstairs. The others had arrived. Ethan smiled. "Come on, it's time." They went back down to find the room alive again, candles glowing, soft laughter filling the air. Tonight's theme, the host announced, was Truth We Never Told. Claire listened as people shared pieces of themselves. A teacher confessed she missed her childhood dreams. A man admitted he still carried guilt over something he couldn't fix. Each story unfolded with raw emotion, and every word seemed to lift a little of the weight off the air. When it was Claire's turn, she hesitated. But then she took a deep breath and spoke. "I think I've spent a long time pretending I was fine," she said softly. "After my marriage ended, I built a life that looked peaceful, but inside I was just surviving. I didn't realize how quiet I'd become until someone invited me to listen again." Her eyes met Ethan's for a brief second. He smiled, not as someone who was proud, but as someone who understood. After the circle ended, the group stayed to talk. People hugged, exchanged notes, laughed through tears. It was the kind of warmth Claire hadn't felt in years. As the crowd thinned, Ethan approached her again. "You spoke beautifully tonight." "I just told the truth," she said. "That's what makes it beautiful." He glanced toward the piano. "Would you stay for a little while? There's something I want to play for you." She nodded, curious. He sat at the piano, his fingers brushing the keys gently before beginning to play the same melody she'd heard earlier. Soft, haunting, and full of emotion. The notes seemed to fill every corner of the room, reaching deep into her heart. When he finished, the silence that followed was almost sacred. "That was incredible," she said quietly. "Did you write it?" "Yes," he said. "It's called Before We Forget." "Forget what?" she asked. He looked up at her. "What it feels like to care." The words lingered between them. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, tapping softly against the windows. Claire stood there watching him, feeling something she hadn't expected. Not just admiration, but connection. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something close. A quiet recognition that their stories were somehow meant to cross. Ethan closed the piano and looked at her. "You know, most people come here once and never return. They think it's just another meeting. But you, I think you're meant to stay," she smiled faintly. "Stay as what?" He shrugged, his tone light but eyes serious. "Maybe as a reminder that even the ones who've stopped believing in themselves can start again." Claire didn't know how to answer. But she didn't need to. The look they shared said enough. As she left that night, the streets shimmered with reflections. The world looked the same. And yet, it didn't. Every light, every sound felt more alive. She realized she'd stepped into something rare. Not a secret club, but a doorway back to herself. Still, as she walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that the circle, and Ethan, held more layers yet to be revealed. And next time, she promised herself she'd be ready to uncover them. Claire woke up the next morning with the sound of rain still echoing in her mind, though the skies were finally clear. The world outside her window felt lighter, brighter, as if something inside her had quietly shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't just passing through her days. She was feeling them, but with that new energy came a quiet ache. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, about his music, his words, the way he looked at her as if she was more than the fragments of her past. By noon, her small bookstore felt unusually still. The usual customers came and went, but her thoughts drifted elsewhere. She caught herself staring at the old piano in the corner, the one her ex-husband had once bought but never played. It had gathered dust for years, untouched since he left. For some reason, she walked over, ran her fingers along the keys, and pressed one. The note rang out, fragile, hesitant, but it carried something that made her chest tighten. She didn't know if it was courage or longing that pushed her, but that evening she found herself standing once again outside the circle. The door was locked, the lights dim. For a moment she thought maybe she had been foolish to come uninvited. But before she could turn away, she heard footsteps. "Claire?" Ethan's voice came from behind her. He looked surprised, but not unhappy, to see her. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said quickly. "I was just walking by." "You came at the right time," he said, unlocking the door. "I was about to start a new piece. Want to listen?" She hesitated only for a second before nodding. Inside, the air felt different, quiet, like a space between heartbeats. Ethan turned on a single lamp that bathed the room in warm light. He sat at the piano, motioned for her to sit nearby, and began to play. The melody was soft, but it carried something heavier this time, not sorrow, but memory. As the music filled the room, Claire could feel his emotion in every note, as if he was speaking without words. When he finally stopped, the silence was deep and alive. "That was beautiful," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "It's unfinished." "So was I," she said quietly, and the words slipped out before she could think. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "Not anymore," she held his gaze, her heart thudding. There was nothing romantic said, nothing improper, but there was a closeness between them. A simple, human understanding that went deeper than words. After a while, they talked. Not about the club or the people in it, but about life. He told her about leaving his corporate job after losing his father, how he had started the circle to give meaning back to his days. She shared how she'd once dreamed of writing, but somewhere between responsibilities and heartbreak, she had let it fade away. "Then start again," he said simply. "Write something, anything, even if no one reads it." "I wouldn't know where to start." "Start with what you feel right now," he said softly. "Start with the truth." That night, Claire went home and sat by her window with an empty notebook. The words came slowly at first, like hesitant steps. But soon her pen began to move freely. She wrote about the loneliness she'd hidden, about the small bookstore, the piano, and the man who reminded her that beginnings can come from endings. Days turned into weeks, and the circle became her quiet sanctuary. She began attending regularly, sometimes to listen, sometimes to speak. She even shared one of her short stories one evening. It was about finding light in an unexpected place. When she finished reading, the room was silent. Then came a soft, genuine applause. Ethan's eyes met hers across the circle, and the pride in them warmed her in a way she hadn't felt in years. After the meeting, he walked her to the door. "You found your voice," he said simply. "I guess I did," she replied. "Thanks to you," he shook his head. "No, Claire, you found it because it was never gone. You just stopped listening." As weeks passed, their bond grew quietly, not loud or rushed, but steady, built on small moments. The way he brought her coffee when she arrived early, the way she'd stay after everyone left, helping him stack chairs or put away candles. It wasn't romance in the way movies told it. It was real, patient, and unspoken. One evening near the start of winter, Claire arrived to find the circle unusually quiet. Only a handful of candles were lit, and Ethan was sitting alone, his head bowed. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. He looked up, his expression tired but honest. "I got news this morning. The building's being sold. We'll have to leave soon." Her heart sank. "What? You can't just—" "This place means so much to people." "I know," he said softly. "But some things are beyond us." The silence that followed was heavy. Claire felt an ache she couldn't name. "What will you do?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Maybe start again somewhere else. Or maybe it's time to let it go." She sat beside him. "You once told me to start again. Maybe that's your turn now." He looked at her with a small, sad smile. "Maybe it is." They sat there for a long time, not speaking, listening to the soft hum of the city outside. And though nothing was said, both knew something was ending. Not their connection, but the space that had brought them together. When the final meeting came a week later, the atmosphere was bittersweet. People shared memories, laughter, even tears. Claire read one last piece, a letter she had written to the circle itself. "You reminded us that we still matter," she said, her voice trembling. "That even in silence, there is a place for kindness, for truth, and for starting over." By the end, no one wanted to leave. Ethan stood, thanked everyone, and played one last song. The same melody she had heard on that rainy night when it all began. Only now, it felt complete. As the last note faded, Claire realized something. The circle might be ending, but what it had given her, courage, hope, connection, would never disappear. After everyone left, Ethan walked her out. The night was cold, the air sharp with the scent of winter. "So this is goodbye?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No, this is just the next chapter." They stood there, the streetlights painting gold over the wet pavement. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan said quietly, "Claire, thank you for reminding me that what we build in others never truly ends." She smiled, eyes glistening. "And thank you for reminding me that I still have a story to tell." He reached out, took her hand briefly, not out of romance, but respect, gratitude, understanding, and just like that, they parted, not with sadness, but peace. As Claire walked away, the cold didn't sting. She felt warm inside, alive, and ready to face whatever came next. She turned once, saw Ethan locking the door of the circle for the last time, and smiled, because she knew it wasn't really closing. It was simply moving, quietly, into the hearts of everyone it had touched. Winter came and went, and with it, the familiar rhythm of Claire's life quietly changed. The circle was gone, the building sold and replaced by a cafe that smelled of roasted beans and modern furniture. But something from that place had stayed inside her, a pulse of meaning, a reason to keep moving forward. Her bookstore had grown livelier in recent months. The shelves were fuller, the walls brighter. She'd started a small weekly event called Evening Reads, where locals came to share their own writings, much like the Circle once did. It wasn't as big, nor as magical, but it was hers, and it carried the same warmth of truth and connection. She often thought about Ethan, not with sadness, but with quiet gratitude. They hadn't spoken since that last night. He had promised it wasn't goodbye, but months had passed without a word. Sometimes she'd wonder where he went, whether he started over somewhere else, or if he was still chasing the melody he'd once played for her, the song about remembering what it feels like to care. Then one windy afternoon, everything changed again. She was arranging a new display near the window when she saw a familiar figure standing across the street. A man in a dark coat, a scarf wrapped loosely around his neck, looking at her store's sign as if searching for courage. Her heart stopped for a moment, and then started racing. It was Ethan. Before she could second-guess herself, she pushed open the door, the bell above it chiming. "Ethan?" she called. He turned, that same calm smile spreading across his face. "Claire, I was hoping you'd still recognize me." "Recognize you?" she said, her voice lighter than she felt. "I couldn't forget you if I tried." He laughed softly. "May I come in?" "Of course." Inside, the air was warm with the scent of coffee and paper. Ethan looked around slowly, taking in the walls filled with books and framed quotes. "It's beautiful," he said. "You built this," she shrugged modestly. "It's small, but it feels alive. People come, they read, they talk. It reminds me of the Circle," he finished for her. She nodded. "Exactly," he smiled. "Then you've kept it alive." She led him to a table near the back, where sunlight spilled through the glass. For a while they just talked, about little things, about life. Ethan told her he'd spent the past few months traveling along the coast, helping small towns set up community art spaces. "It's not much," he said, "but it keeps the spirit of the Circle alive." "That sounds perfect," Claire said sincerely. "You always had a gift for bringing people together." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You do too, you know. You've done more than you think." Their conversation moved easily, like two rivers finding the same path again. But beneath the lightness, there was something deeper. The quiet understanding of two people who had helped heal each other without even realizing it. After a while, Ethan looked toward the corner of the shop where an old piano stood. The same one Claire had rediscovered months ago. "You kept it," he said. "I did," she said with a small smile. "It doesn't sound perfect, but it still plays." He tilted his head. "May I?" "Of course." Ethan walked over, lifted the cover, and pressed a key. The sound was soft, a little uneven, but full of warmth. Then he began to play a melody Claire recognized instantly, "Before We Forget." Only now it sounded different. Fuller, complete. Claire stood beside him, her eyes glistening as the final note lingered in the air. "You finished it," she whispered. He nodded, smiling. "I did, and I added something." "What's that?" "A second theme," he said, looking at her. "It's about finding home again." Something inside her shifted. She didn't need him to explain. She understood. When the music faded, there was a comfortable silence between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled. "So," she said finally, "are you planning to stay in town?" "I might," he said, "if there's a reason to." Her smile was quiet, knowing. "I think there might be." He laughed softly, the sound light but full of meaning. "You always did know how to say a lot with very few words." They talked until the light outside turned golden. People came and went, unaware that inside that little bookstore, two stories that had once drifted apart had quietly found their way back. Before leaving, Ethan pulled something from his coat, a small notebook, the same kind he used to carry at the Circle. He handed it to her. "It's yours," he said. "Blank pages. For whatever comes next." She looked down at it, smiling. "Maybe I'll write about a man who taught people how to listen again. And maybe," he said softly, "he'll write about the woman who reminded him why he started." Their eyes met, and the air seemed to hold still. When Ethan finally left that evening, the sun was setting, painting the world in orange and gold. Claire stood at the doorway, watching him walk down the street until he disappeared around the corner. She didn't feel sad this time, because she knew, whatever path he took, they were no longer strangers passing through each other's lives. They had changed each other in ways that would last. That night, she opened the notebook he'd given her. On the first page, she wrote, "Sometimes life doesn't give you what you expect. It gives you what you need. A moment, a person, a truth that wakes you up again." She closed it and smiled. A week later, Claire hosted her biggest evening reads yet. The shop was full, the lights dim, the piano polished, and as she welcomed the guests, she noticed a familiar figure slip quietly into the back row. Ethan, sitting with a gentle smile, as if he had never left at all. When it was her turn to speak, she read a story, not fiction this time, but the truth. She told them about a place that had changed lives, about the power of connection, and about how sometimes the smallest encounters could spark the biggest transformations. When she finished, there was silence, and then warm applause. She glanced toward the back of the room. Ethan was clapping softly, his eyes bright. Later, as the guests left, he approached her. "You found your ending," he said. She smiled. "No," she said, closing her notebook. "Just another beginning." The two of them turned off the lights, locked the shop, and stepped outside. The night was cool, stars flickering faintly above. They walked side by side down the quiet street, their steps in rhythm, saying nothing, because they didn't need to. Somewhere in the distance, a street musician played a tune that sounded achingly familiar. Claire listened and smiled. It reminded her of Before We Forget, only now she knew she never would.